Rightio all, so it's Lee Henkin here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about why most people fail with cold outreach prospecting, okay? I know a lot of people tend to struggle with this, and it is a super effective way to actually build your sales pipeline once you actually master this area of client acquisition. So let's just dive into it. I'm going to cover basically, the reasons why I find in my experience most people struggle or just like completely fail to get results with it. Okay, and hopefully by the end of this video you have a bit of clarity around what to do. Two main reasons really. That's really what I've sort of noticed. Is one is like poor foundation, and two is poor like actual outreach strategy and processes. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, what a lot of people do is that those who are struggling, at least, is they see these things as moving parts rather than as like crucial pieces of the gigantic jigsaw puzzle, if you want to put it that way. Okay, so it's like all the pieces of the puzzle have got to fit together to actually get this working correctly. And you need both of these things, so your foundation and your actual outreach messaging strategy processes, they all need to be tied together, working as one sort of key core component, not just as like individual loose parts, which is what I find most people who struggle with, that's what they're doing. Okay, so yeah, it's really important that you understand that. Okay, so let's just dive into foundation, what I mean by that. So your foundation, this is really like, like your positioning, who your ideal clients are, your sales offer, things like that. Okay, this is just cues, because if you try to do lead gen and sales with a poor foundation, it's like trying to build a house on sand. Like, it's just not going to last very long, and you're just never going to get results, really. Because going back to what I said about, like, the two things being part of the whole puzzle, not just individual moving parts, is like your outreach messaging, your strategy, your processes, it's like a flow on from your foundation. So if your foundation sucks and it's really poor, like, it's going to then affect your actual outreach messaging. Okay, it's going to affect your strategy and your processes. So that's why it's really important. It's like, you could get the best copywriter in the world to write you cold emails, put the strategy together, but if you've got like a poor foundation, I can pretty much guarantee you that your results will be mediocre at best. Okay, so it's like you need all things working together harmoniously, basically. So yeah, it all starts with your foundation, your lead generation, your sales. It all starts with it, okay? And if you don't do this, it's going to affect the results of your outreach. So specific kind of things is that people who are kind of broad and generic in terms of their targeting, it's like, oh, I just target all local businesses. Or it's like, I just target, I don't know, you get the point. Like, they're just broad and generic with like who they're targeting and what their offer is and who it's actually for. The key is being specific and specializing in something. Like, you got to specialize in some aspect. Like, me, for example, I specialize in cold outreach prospecting. Like, that's a specific area of marketing and lead generation. Like, I don't specialize in SEO, content marketing, social media management, lead generation, Facebook ads. I specialize one thing, and that one thing is cold outreach prospecting and getting results with it. That's literally it. And that's what I do for one-on-one coaching. That's what I do for done-for-you appointment setting for agencies and consultancies as well, okay? So I don't do anything else. That's all I specialize in. And I find a lot of people who struggle is like they're just too like broad and generic with like their targeting, in terms of like who their perfect kind of ideal client is, and then that affects like your offer as well. Okay, so there's that side of it. That's really important to get right with your foundation. You really need to specialize in some particular area, and niching is a good way to do that, but also like the kind of service and the offer as well is a good way to do that. Okay, so there's kind of different ways you can specialize in order to get that specificity. Okay, so you really need to be specific, because that's what's going to then have that flow-on effect when it comes to doing your actual prospecting, because your messaging will be more specific as a result. Okay, so and your targeting will be more specific, and then you can match that messaging with the actual targeting. So it's going to have a better effect when the prospect actually reads your outreach messaging. Okay, so yeah, that's a really important part of it. Other thing too is results-based offer. It's really important to have an irresistible results-based offer. Okay, so an offer that targets one specific pain, challenge, or problem, it's a very clear pain, challenge, or problem that your target prospect's aware they have, ideally, or at least knows of it. Okay, and ideally as well, it's a problem that they've had for a while, and they've been struggling to try and solve for a while as well, because that's going to allow you to charge more money and a more premium price if it's a pain that's quite difficult for them to solve on their own. Another component of an irresistible offer is that your solution, basically your offer itself, the thing that you do, it has to fix that pain, that specific pain, challenge, problem, and get them to a result outcome that they want. And that's really where the results-based offer comes into it. The offer you sell to your clients, it needs to give them a specific result, okay? Ideally a tangible result, because that's what's going to get their attention. You can do intangible as well. It depends, because you got different types of offers. The way I look at it, you've got nice to have offers and then need to have offers, okay? And they're both going to be different. They're going to have a different sort of impact when you're actually doing your outreach. Okay, ideally you want your offer to be a need to have kind of thing, rather than a nice to have. A nice to have's branding, for example. It's not directly resulting to revenue, say lead generation, where you're actually putting appointments on someone's calendar, for example, or paid advertising. Hopefully that sort of makes it clear to you what I mean by sort of nice to have and need to have kind of offers. So yeah, you really want to have an irresistible results-based offer that promises them to help them with a specific pain, challenge, problem to get a specific result outcome they want, ideally tangible. Okay, so that's a really important part of it, because when it comes to doing your outreach, your offer plays a huge role in the kind of messaging you have. All right, and also just your sales too. Your offer's a core piece of this puzzle, because it impacts how you do your lead gen, and then it will give you more confidence actually on your sales calls too. Last thing here, poor messaging to market alignment, and that really just comes down to targeting, and understanding what it is they want and need, what your perfect ideal client wants and needs. And if you're not clear on that, who they are, if you don't do your target market research on this, then there's no way you're ever going to create outreach messaging that's in alignment with the market. And that's what I mean by in alignment. It's in alignment with what they want to need, what they need to see and hear. And the key to getting that market alignment with your messaging is actually first doing your research, so you know exactly what it is they want and need. And a lot of people know this at a surface level, but that's pretty much where it begins and ends on a surface level. You need to make sure you're actually deep, go deep with this to understand what it is they want, what it is they want to see and hear, because that's what will allow you to actually put the right messaging in front of them. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So that's really the foundational kind of things. You need to be specific in terms of what you do, what you specialize in. So one thing, one offer, ideally. You need to really know with clarity who your perfect ideal client is. You need to have a results-based offer that promises to solve their specific pain, challenge, problem, and give them a specific result and outcome, ideally tangible. And then actually have that messaging that's in alignment with what the market needs and wants. So they're really the main things in terms of foundation. And I notice like a lot of people who struggle with prospecting, they brush over this, and it shows when they actually do their outreach messaging. So this part of it, this is the other big sort of thing that I notice people struggle with, or where I sort of see the issue, is their actual outreach messaging and like the approach, the strategy, things like that. Now, a lot of this stuff, though, the actual outreach messaging, the strategy, and even like the processes, that can actually be fixed just by like fixing the foundation. Because like I've said, like the messaging you're going to use, the way you build your list of prospects, for example, is going to flow on from your foundation. And this is what I'm talking about, like at the start of the video, where people just look at these as like individual moving parts rather than one piece of the gigantic puzzle. And this is just what like totally screws them up. Okay, so you have to look at everything as like a holistic kind of thing, because that's what it is. All right, so what's some examples of this? So poor list building, which I basically, just covered. But again, they're building out a list of prospects that isn't specific enough. There isn't enough clarity around it. They're not even really, I see some people like who I speak with, and I ask them how they build their list, and it was just like, and I ask them their targeting. It's like dentists. And I asked them how they build their list, and this guy just plugged into D7 Lead Finder dentist and then just started, blasting them all via email. And then I'm like, well, did you kind of stop and think to yourself which specific dentist might be more interested in your offer than other dentists? Because it's kind of an important question to have an answer to. All right, because then you can that shapes how you build your list, but then it shapes also the messaging you're going to put in front of them. So, you really need to make sure that you actually have like an effective list building approach in place. But a lot of that just carries on from your foundation. Like if you know with specific clarity, like who your perfect ideal client is, it's going to be much easier for you to know like where to find those clients, who the decision makers typically are, how you can get their details, who are the best ones to reach out to versus the ones who probably aren't going to be an ideal fit for the offer. And this is the kind of things you need to be thinking about before you actually start building your list. You don't just want to slap into some tool like a niche and a geographic location and then just start blasting them all. It's just not going to be, it's a very low sum conversion game, okay? And you can increase your conversions from your outreach just by building a more specific and targeted list based on exactly what your targeting criteria is. All right, so that's really important. So a few things related to actual outreach messaging. So many times when I review people's cold emails, LinkedIn messaging, whatever, way too generic and broad. Like it's shit like, we specialize in data-driven advertising or something. And it's like literally every advertising agency says that. Like it's just so generic and broad. So you want to have something like specific. You want to have specific actual messaging that's specific to that target prospect's industry or that target persona and your offer. Okay, so it's really important that the messaging is specifically matching that target audience that you're reaching out to, target prospect persona, rather than generic and broad. Okay, and that ties into, again, messaging not communicating differentiation. Like, a lot of people's messaging, I see it just sounds like all the same shit all the time. But again, if you're really clear, again, going back to the foundation on who your perfect type of ideal client is, you've got like a specific offer for that specific challenge group of people, your messaging's instantly going to stand out, okay, because it doesn't come across as like generic and broad. It comes across as specific and relevant. Like I've had so many times that I've jumped on a call with someone from a cold email and they've said, they usually ignore cold emails, but they replied to mine because it sounded different. And the only thing really that made my messaging different is that it was specific to that target group of people and targeted a specific pain that I know they've got and presented them with a specific solution. that's really the key. And this is why being specific with your messaging and your targeting is so important, okay? And that'll help you create that differentiation and that perception that, you know, you're a bit different to the other kind of agencies and consultancies that reach out to them. Okay. Another one here, messaging doesn't communicate results and outcomes. So yeah, this is very common. It's a very like small thing, but very important thing. Like, you have to communicate specific results and outcomes with your offer. And your messaging in general, like, this is what's going to get their attention, okay? Because they have a specific result or outcome they want. Now, you want to be able to communicate what that is, again, ideally in tangible numbers. You can do it with intangible, but I always find it's much more powerful when you do it with tangible numbers. Okay, it just gets more attention and interest from the prospects you reach out to. But this is super important. Like, prospects don't give a shit that you do Facebook ads. They really don't. They don't give a shit that you do SEO. All they give a shit about is the result that that thing you do provides. Because SEO, advertising, whatever it is you offer as a service or whatever, is literally just a mechanism or a bridge to getting something they want. So that's what you want to focus on, what it is they want, that result and outcome, and communicating that, because that's what they care about. Okay, that's what's going to get their attention, get them interested enough to the point where they're curious to actually want to reply to you in the first place to hear a bit more about what you got. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Last one, you're taking a one-size-fits-all approach. So yeah, this happens a lot too. Like, no matter what channel you're using, like if you know you can reach your target audience on, like, say, LinkedIn and an email, for example, like, you're not going to take a cold email sort of a pitching kind of approach to LinkedIn, because you got to understand the users are different on LinkedIn compared to, say, email. It's like with Facebook too. Like, I do it on lead gen on Facebook. People, like, the channel is different and the users on there are different. They use that platform in a different way. And it's the same for every platform, okay? So you can't just take a one-size-fits-all approach. Your outreach approach actually has to be modified to that channel and the way the users typically engage with that channel. All right, so that's really important, because you just can't take some like one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach to it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So they're really like the main things I notice with people who struggle to actually get results with cold outreach prospecting, or they just totally fail with it altogether. It's usually because of, like, foundation or the actual outreach messaging and process. But I'd say, like, most people I speak with, I'd say their biggest problem is probably the foundation. But I mean, I have, there's been many times where I've spoken to people too where they've actually got a pretty good foundation. They just, like, don't know how to put that into a concise and compelling message when they write their cold emails, or, will put together like a proper LinkedIn strategy, something like that. But yeah, like, definitely more often than not, I notice it's more a foundational thing. But so yeah, like, if you're struggling now, it's probably quite likely, like, it's one of those two things or both of those two things. And that's just what I've noticed, like, just from my own experiences. When I first started doing cold outreach, I, like, totally sucked at it. And at least in my case, the thing I sucked most with was definitely my foundation. Personally, it was just like crap. So I worked on that first, and then the messaging and things just become, like, so much more effective till now. Like, every week I get sales meetings consistently. I've always got a pipeline of deals to work on closing. I just never worry about it anymore, basically. And the reason why is because first I got an understanding and control over that foundational aspect of it. And then that made the outreach messaging and just the strategy a million times easier. So yeah, hopefully that helps you all. If you've got any questions, drop a comment below. And I hope this sort of helped give you a bit of clarity if you're in a place now where you are struggling to actually, get leads consistently, book sales meetings. I hope this gave you a bit of clarity about what you might be actually causing you to struggle and what you can do to fix it. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Like I said, if you've got any questions, drop them below, and I'll see you next time.